Hello, and thank you for joining us for Dallas Theological Seminary's Biohazard training. We hope that you enjoy this video and learn something new about how to protect yourself and your coworkers in the process. A biohazard is an organism or the products of an organism that could pose a health risk to people, animals, or the environment. This includes things like viruses, bacteria, or parasites, and any chemical toxins they might produce. These organisms are called pathogens, and in this training, we will show you how to protect yourself and your coworkers from the biohazardous threats you are most likely to encounter on campus. A pathogen can be found anywhere, in the air, water, soil, on any surface, and even in our food. But they are only hazardous if the conditions are right for the organism to multiply and spread. The human body provides a nearly ideal environment for pathogens to multiply once a person is infected. Maintaining a strong immune system by not smoking, regularly eating fruits and vegetables, exercising, only drinking alcohol in moderation, which as part of DTS, I'm sure you are already doing. Getting enough sleep, seminary students, this means you, and trying to minimize stress are the best ways to prevent the growth of pathogens that do manage to get into your body. Antibiotics and other treatments prescribed by a doctor also serve to minimize the damage and spread of hazardous organisms in infected individuals. Once an individual is infected, however, it is very important to do all we can to prevent the spread or transmission of these pathogens to other people. Pathogens can be categorized based on how they are transmitted from person to person. Direct transmission occurs through close contact with an infected person, or through droplet spread, like if an infected person were to sneeze on their unsuspecting coworker. Indirect transmission is more subtle. In dry conditions, water droplets from sneezing and coughing may stay in the air long after the initial sneeze or cough. This allows the pathogen to become airborne. Most pathogens are too heavy to be transmitted this way, but some viruses, such as the ones that cause colds and flu, are particularly difficult to avoid because they are often transmitted in this way. While we're talking about it, sneezing into your arm is a great way to avoid transmitting your infection to another person. Indirect transmission can also occur when the pathogen catches a ride on an inanimate object, also called vehicles, like countertops, food, water, blood, and other bodily fluids. Vectors, which are living organisms, can also help transmit pathogens from person to person. While it is unlikely you will encounter any borne pathogens on campus, be sure to take precautions such as using bug spray when spending time in wooded or grassy areas. Though these types of infections are rare, diseases like Lyme disease, West Nile, and plague are all transmitted by bugs, and all of them can be very serious. The most common airborne pathogens that you might encounter on campus are colds, the flu, and the biohazard of the year, COVID-19. The common cold is caused by many different strains of rhinovirus. It causes a mild, though unpleasant illness, which you are likely all familiar with, and it lasts approximately 1 to 2 weeks. While this biohazard doesn't sound all that serious, the CDC notes that it is the main reason for children and adults to miss work and school each year. Flu is caused by different strains of the influenza virus. Symptoms of the illness are similar to the common cold, but also include feeling feverish, additional fatigue or tiredness, as well as vomiting and diarrhea. While infection is often mild but unpleasant, the disease can be deadly. Fortunately, most of the risk to yourself and others can be reduced by getting the yearly flu vaccine, offered for free or low cost at doctors' offices and drugstores nationwide. Coronavirus disease 2019, aka COVID-19, is our current biggest threat for airborne biohazards. As you likely already know, It is responsible for the current pandemic, which has resulted in sickness, death, and logistical difficulties all over the world. Because it is also very serious and very contagious, everyone on campus is required to wear a cloth or disposable face mask, like this one, or a face shield when interacting with others. Avoid gatherings of more than 10 people and maintain social distancing by staying at least 6 feet away from others in order to prevent the spread of the disease. The symptoms of COVID-19 include all of the symptoms of flu, plus shortness of breath, and a new loss of taste or smell. If these symptoms develop into trouble breathing, persistent pain or pressure in the chest, confusion, inability to stay awake, and/or bluish skin, please go to the nearest emergency room immediately. If you suspect that you have contracted this virus, or if you live with someone who has tested positive for this virus, please inform your supervisor, stay home or go home, and follow self-reporting instructions at www.dds.edu/about/coronavirus under the COVID-19 self-reporting tab. Additional resources can also be found on this website, and your supervisor will follow up with you on instructions for coming back to work. Transmission of all airborne pathogens can be prevented with the same strategies. Make sure that you cough or sneeze into your sleeve or a tissue rather than on your coworker. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth with unwashed hands, as these parts of your body, called mucous membranes, are more vulnerable to infection. Wash your hands often with soap and water to prevent accidentally touching your face or someone else's after touching a contaminated surface. While you might feel bad for calling in sick and leaving others to do your work, it would be much worse if everyone in your department ended up getting sick and staying home next week. Our next category of commonly encountered biohazards are fecal-oral pathogens. These are pathogens that can make us sick when human or animal waste comes into contact with a person's mouth. This can happen when a person forgets to wash their hands after changing a diaper, cleaning a bathroom, or handling garbage which contains used diapers or animal waste. While there are many kinds of fecal-oral pathogens you may encounter on campus, for this training we will focus on hepatitis A and E. coli. Hepatitis A is a different virus from hepatitis B and C, which we will talk about later. But like them, it targets the liver. This virus causes a short-term illness that can be cured by treatment, but if not taken seriously, the illness can progress to liver cancer or hardening of the liver. Unlike hepatitis B and C, the virus is not transmitted through blood, but through food, water, or surfaces contaminated with human waste. E. coli is one of the most commonly occurring fecal-oral pathogens. While most strains of E. coli are harmless and are a natural and healthy part of human and animal intestinal systems, some strains produce hazardous toxins which can be life-threatening. Unpasteurized milk, unpasteurized soft cheeses, raw beef, and even contaminated vegetables are common carriers for these organisms. Trash, which might contain raw meat, dairy products, or human and animal waste, should be handled with care to prevent unintentional infection. Transmission of fecal-oral pathogens can be prevented by washing your hands with soap and water before eating or preparing food. In this instance, hand sanitizer is not as effective and should not be used as a substitute for soap and water. Also, wear proper PPE when working in and around bathrooms and waste receptacles whenever possible. Bloodborne pathogens may not be the most common biohazard encountered on campus, but they do pose the most serious risk and should be handled only by authorized staff members. The most well-known bloodborne pathogens include HIV and hepatitis B and C. Human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, is a virus that can cause acquired immune deficiency syndrome, or AIDS, in the infected person. AIDS greatly increases the person's vulnerability to serious infection and cancer, and often leads to death within a few years of onset. Today, many treatments are available which can slow the progress of an HIV infection and can prevent the infected person from developing AIDS for decades. Still, there is no known cure for the virus once it becomes established, so medical care will be a constant need for the rest of an infected person's life. Hepatitis B and C are viruses that cause long-term inflammation of the liver, which can progress to hardening of the liver, liver cancer, and other serious complications resulting in death. Treatments which slow the damage to the liver are now available, though a liver transplant is still often necessary at some point in the person's life. Both HIV and hepatitis B and C are not transmitted through air, water, food, insect bites, or normal human contact. They are, however, transmitted through blood and other bodily fluids, which means cleaning up these biohazards carries significant risk. If you encounter blood, vomit, or a spill of other bodily fluids on campus, do not attempt to clean up the spill by yourself. Instead, contact the maintenance hotline at extension 5170 or radio them. The operator will then contact the trained personnel from DTS Custodial Services, who will use special tools and chemicals to safely clean up the biohazard. If you suspect you might have been exposed to one of these bloodborne pathogens, seek medical care immediately. Protective treatments can be administered, which may prevent the infection from occurring in the hours following exposure. For more prevention, a vaccine to hepatitis B is also available. If you haven't received the vaccination in the past, talk to your supervisor. DTS would love to cover the cost of this vaccination for you. This concludes Dallas Theological Seminary's Biohazard training. Thank you for watching.